Lessons from Babel. And it's 9 verses. That's all it is. Plus a few verses back from Genesis chapter 10. This is Genesis 11. Plus a few verses in Genesis 10 that tells us who was the king of Babel. And some folks, I think I've said this before, some folks that you ask them the question, who is the king of Babel? And they, what fiction have you been reading? Well, no, Genesis chapter 10 tells us that the beginning of his kingdom was Babel. And who was that? That was Nimrod. Nimrod was the king of Babel. But we're just going to go bit by bit. And I do want to make mention of this before we get too far into it. That when Moses writes this, it is when Moses writes this, it's a few centuries past this point. Okay, he wasn't there at Babel, and he wasn't even in the next generation after Babel. It's going to be a few hundred years before we get to Moses writing this down. But when Moses is writing this, of course, he's writing Genesis in the wilderness. That's where he writes his 5 books, is in the wilderness after they have been taken out of Exodus. And when he writes concerning Babel, Israel, the Jewish people, would have known about Babel. He's going to be giving some very good details, and he's giving the truth about it, not just things that have been passed down from person to person, orally, by some oral tradition that goes from parent to child, which can get twisted and messed up. This is going to be clarity, but they would have known about Babel because everybody knew about Babel. All right? It was a shared history until everyone left. Everyone knew why they left Babel. Everybody knew there was a place where everybody, pretty much, we'll just say a lot of folks were at Babel. Now, the whole world had one language and one speech. That's because they're all the descendants of one couple. And Noah and his wife taught the language to their sons, and of course their wives would have had the same language, and then it went down generation after generation after generation, and we are talking about a few generations after the flood. All right? And everything is the entire earth is having to recover from it. World population has to recover from it, going from I don't know how many prior to the flood. It would have been millions. It could have been billions. I don't know. But I know it had been, this world would have had a lot of folks in it. But we're going from that to 8, from stepping off the ark. And here we are just a few generations later. Now the whole earth had one language and one speech, and it came to pass as they journeyed from the east that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. Let's discuss this for a second, because they're not coming from the mountains of Ararat. All right, evidently they have left Ararat and went east, because from this land of Shinar, this valley of Shinar, Ararat is kind of to the northwest. And this says they came from the east. And it was, those mountains of Ararat probably was not a good place to settle, because you're going to need to grow crops. And you're going to need a place that, being in the mountains is not exactly a good place to grow wheat and other things like that. You need a better area for doing that. And they probably found it in the east, wherever that happened to be. And I don't know where that was. It just says east. And I do believe they are moving to the plain of Shinar because their population is getting to a point where they need something better than where they were in the east. And this would support a larger population, evidently. They had water, plenty of it, better ground, I suppose, this valley of Shinar. and they saw this as a place to settle down, but they also saw it as a place to make what I call City 1. All right, that's just my name for it, because it would be the first city after the flood. Now, Nimrod, nor anybody who lived in that city, would have called it Babel until afterwards, because that word means confusion. Nobody's going to call their city confusion. It's called confusion because of what happened there, and everyone left from it. And we don't know what they called it. It doesn't really matter. But here they are going from the east to the plain of Shinar. Then they said to one another, "Come, let us make bricks and bake them thoroughly." So they know how to do this. All right, they've got the technology to do it. They have the knowledge to do it. And no doubt that knowledge would have come by way of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and all their wives, who would have seen that sort of thing on the other side of the flood. And so they would have known how to do this. They passed it along, and they're going to make bricks. That's going to be their stone. And of course they have to have, we're going to bake them thoroughly. They had brick for stone, and they had asphalt for mortar. So they know how to build buildings out of brick. They know how to do it. And by the way, just as an aside, Uruk, which is also in Genesis by a slightly different pronunciation. In Genesis chapter 10, one of the cities that Nimrod builds after Babel is called Erech. There is another pronunciation from that in the Sumerian, which is Uruk rather. Uruk was a city also with walls made of brick and mortar. Nimrod did the same thing there after Babel failed, and Babel failed terribly in this. And they said, look at this, here is the motivation. Come, let us build ourselves a city. All right? A city, and a tower whose top is in the heavens. Let us make a name for ourselves, and here is the motive. Make a name for ourselves, lest we be scattered abroad over the face of the whole earth. Well, that's exactly what God wanted them to do. He wanted them to scatter all over the face of the earth. There's a lot of room here. There's continents. From where they were in the land of Shinar, you just choose a direction and you can walk thousands of miles. Just choose a direction and you can get there. No big deal. As a matter of fact, in the Chinese language, their language, I have no doubt, came out of Babel. Now, it would have changed over time, as languages do. It would have changed. But they use characters that actually represent things. All right, they're not exactly pictographs as one might think, but it is a representation. And their symbol for migration, actually, you look at the different symbols inside that collection of symbols, means great walk from the west. That's exactly what it means. And where would they have been coming from? Out of Babel, and be coming from the west, heading east. And great walk, yeah, it would have been a long time before they would have hit the coast there at the Sea of Japan. All right, so they said, come, let us build ourselves a city. And notice, this is what they want to do. What they don't want to do. They don't want everyone going wherever they want to go. They want to keep the entire population of the earth in one city, keeping it there. That's the motive, and that's exactly what God did not want them to do. He didn't care about them building a tower as though somehow that's forbidden, because we sort of have a lot of towers, and people began to build towers in the ancient world. All right, that isn't it. It's the fact, and he didn't mind them building a city, he just did not want them with the idea that everyone's staying there. And there would be very good reason to keep let everybody spread out. One is, as the population grew, that city would not really be able to handle a population beyond a certain point. It just couldn't do it. Number two, you have the entire world population under one government, which it would have been under one king of Nimrod in his day. That's a bad thing. When you have a king who becomes wicked and a tyrant, and he happens to be over everybody, that's no good. But you get everybody to spread out to where whatever might happen with Nimrod in Uruk or Nineveh, which he also built those, it doesn't affect the Egyptians, and it doesn't affect the Babylonians, and it doesn't affect anyone else. It just affects them. All right, so this is their motive. Their motive is to keep world population all together. They are one family. We all are that one family. They're an extended family. We too are an extended family. That's what we are. And everyone went and scattered after all this was done. Now, the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the sons of men had built. Now, we know they had not finished building the city. Really, you don't finish building a city. Because as a city grows, you have to build more and more. But it looks like, just to me, tower's done. Looks to me like the tower is finished. I could be wrong about that. It looks to me like they had, in fact, finished that thing. But he's not concerned about stopping the work on the tower. He wants to stop the work on the city because that's what it says. We'll get there in a second. And the Lord said, indeed, the people are one, and they all have one language, and this is what they begin to do. What do they begin to do? Stay together. We're all going to be in one place, and that's it. Now's the time God wants them, disperse. This is what they begin to do. Now, nothing that they propose to do will be withheld from them. But they could do all kinds of things. Being united under one language, they could, in fact, choose other things that they're going to do. Now, come, let us, there God is using that word us again, let us go down and there confuse their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. Here is the beginning of the various languages in the earth. And this is going to begin each one of these languages coming out of here is going to be the start of a language group. Now, some of those language groups evidently didn't survive. And it's not that we have that from the biblical text, is that we have that from evidence. Not every one of them survived over the centuries. But it is true concerning, from linguists, that there is no one mother tongue. And everything is a variation off of that. It is not. They know very well that you trace everybody back as far as you can, and they don't all match up. It looks like they come to this parent in the language group, but it doesn't share similarities with anybody else in the day. Now, let us go down. Of course, that is the Godhead. Let us go down. It is not just the Father. It is the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit who have been from everlasting. Let's confuse their language, and this is going to stop it quick. And well, it does. So the Lord scattered them abroad from there over the face of all the earth, and they ceased building the city. It doesn't say tower. It says they ceased building the city. That's the emphasis here. Not that tower, because they're going to go, the Egyptians, you think they didn't build towers? Yeah, they built pyramids. And others going out and building ziggurats, and some out of things out of stone, some out of dirt. You have all kinds of buildings that go on around the earth. God wasn't concerned about that. He was concerned, once again, that this is where they were just going to base themselves and not go anywhere. And with this, we already see from chapter 10 because chapter 10 is giving what is known as the Table of Nations. And it talks about it before we get to this, and where all the nations, these ancient nations, came from. And they are direct descendants from Shem, Ham, and Japheth, going to various places. And it speaks concerning they are separated by their language, which doesn't occur until chapter 11, but it's giving an overview in chapter 10. Now, they go over all the face of the earth. So now there is this separation. And this separation will continue, no doubt, for many centuries, that of going a distance and then others, leaving those settlements and going a little bit further to the west or east or south or wherever, and just continuing on. And then eventually you have those that will find oceans and get on those oceans and go to islands. It will continue on. And so this explains, how did everybody get where they were going? How did that, what started this, and where did all the languages come from? Therefore, now I want you to notice, in the book of Genesis, we have different things saying therefore. If we go to Genesis chapter 2, Genesis 2, verse 24, this is after Eve is created, and we have a therefore. All right, in verse 24, we have a therefore. And some have stated that this is Adam saying it. Adam doesn't say it, because Adam doesn't say it at all. This is Moses writing it centuries later, giving a conclusion because of this design. Here is the conclusion. Therefore, a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. Okay? Now, Adam didn't have a father or mother, neither did Eve. They were both created by God in the Garden of Eden. They're both created there. And this is a conclusion that Moses puts down. Because of this design, this is the conclusion from it. Notice, it is a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife. It was monogamy from the very beginning. It was never meant to be a man with his various wives. And this was meant to be for life. Now, here we have another therefore. And I want you to notice something. Therefore, its name is called Babel, which means confusion. Because there the Lord confused the language of all the earth, and from there the Lord scattered them abroad over the face of all the earth. That was the goal, was to scatter us all over the earth. And He did that by confusing the language. Yesterday, we could all speak together. We all made sense. Today, I have no idea what you're saying, and I'm saying words I never said before. And the language that we had yesterday, nobody possesses that language anymore. Nobody has it. That language would have to be lost entirely. And now we've been rewired with different languages. I don't understand you, you don't understand me. Now God, and we can prove it by way of Genesis chapter 10, God did not separate the nuclear family by way of languages, to where the husband spoke one thing and now the wife speaks another and all the children speak something else. He didn't do that. And we can prove that by Genesis chapter 10, that He did not do that. But the extended family, yeah, cousins, that you could talk to them yesterday, today you can't talk to them at all. And I just want to bring out that therefore, here's this conclusion, its name is called Babel. And this would be explaining why it's called Babel. And I personally believe that when Moses was writing this, Israel already knew concerning Babel. Already. But now this is why it's called that. This is what absolutely what occurred there. And this is God telling us the truth. Exactly what they were doing. God was against it and it failed. All right? Their little experiment failed in all this, and their goals failed. Okay, so that's the end of Babel. But I'm bringing this in because I want you to see something. This is from a class I do occasionally, and it is concerning ancient literature, very ancient literature, and its connection to the Bible. All right, this is the Epic of Immacher. All right, this is a tablet. This tablet, it's a clay tablet. It's actually going to be found in Philadelphia. It's in a museum there. It's University of Pennsylvania Museum of Archaeology and Anthropology. And this is written after Babel. And it speaks of Babel, the days of Babel, in like it was the golden age. Okay, now, here is what it says. And of course, there's fragments. In those days, there was no snake, there was no scorpion, there was no hyena, there was no lion, there was no wild dog, no wolf, there was no fear nor terror. Man had no rival. Or let me ask you this. How many lions were on the ark? Well, there were 2. Or at least 2 cats that you would get lions from those. All right? How long would it take lions to go from where they would have left the ark in the mountains of Ararat to then populate where you happen to be? It could be a very, very long time. And the same thing concerning snakes or scorpions, that it may take a very long time before any of these actually show themselves because they've got to repopulate too. And they're starting from the same starting point there in the mountains of Ararat, where everything is released there to go wherever they're going to go. And there wouldn't be these things, hyenas, wolves, wild dogs, they wouldn't be there. And this would have been an unusual time, especially for us, that there'd be a lot of animals you just wouldn't see. Now, domesticated animals, you would see those because they would be raising those. But these others, they would be scattering wherever they're going to scatter. Now, I want you to notice this. I know you can't read this, but I'm going to read it for you. In those days, the land of Shubur east, the place of plenty, of righteous decrees, harmony-tongued Sumer, that's the south, the great land of the decrees of princeship. Uri, north, the land having all that is needful. The land of Martu, west, resting in security. And I want you to notice the next words. The whole universe, the people in unison. To Enlil, that is their God. We'll get to that in a second. In one tongue gave praise. This epic of Immacher is speaking of a day when everyone spoke the same language. And this day of an age where there's a lot of things you didn't have to worry about. Hyenas, you didn't have to worry about those. Other dangerous animals, you didn't have to worry about those. But they're out there somewhere and they're rebuilding their population too. And now to Enlil, well, what happened to Jehovah? Well, it doesn't take long for people to leave Jehovah. We can read we can read Romans chapter 1, beginning in verse 18, and see what happens in the world. That there will be those that will suppress the whole notion of God. And then everything else springs up, worshiping every sort of thing. And here's an image of Enlil. And this whole thing to Enlil in one tongue gave praise, it doesn't destroy the narrative of the Bible. Matter of fact, it confirms it. It's telling us exactly what the Bible says. It doesn't take long for people to leave God. You would think that from Noah and Shem, Ham, and Japheth that they would have that it would have just continued on faithfully for a few generations, but it doesn't. It doesn't, and they have a different name and someone else who has done this, and here are images of him. Now, let's go to this. Lessons in all this. God's will is done. You're not going to defeat God ever. And even when men don't know they're breaking the will of God, His will is still going to be done. Did they know they were supposed to spread out? Well, I think that we can pretty much look at the words that God gave Noah of what they were supposed to do. Is that passed down? I don't know. I don't know if it is or not. The whole idea of this world multiply and fill it does mean spread out. All right? And God's will is going to be done. There's nothing you can do to stop it. Nothing. If God wanted to destroy the moon right now, what could you do to stop Him? Nothing. If God wanted any one of us dead right now, what could we do to stop Him? Nothing. Once again, nothing. Men fail. Even when they join forces, the might of man collectively is pitiful against the power of God. It by way of comparison, just by way of comparison, and the comparison actually is weak. Suppose an entire bed of ants decides they're joining together to go against you. All right? I think they're doomed. All right? That you can get a hold of some things to take care of those ants pretty quick, in quick order. And the difference between you and an ant is narrower than the distance between God and us. He is so much more powerful. And when they join forces, it means nothing to Him. In Psalm chapter 2, why do the nations rage and the people plot a vain thing? That is the Gentiles and the Jews coming together, and they're going against Jehovah and His Christ. Going against the Lord and His anointed. Even when they join forces, they will fail if they're going against God. And even Gamaliel tried to give the advice that we leave these men alone. That would be the apostles. That would be those that were following Christ. We leave these alone. If it's from men, it will come to nothing. But if it's from God, we're going to find ourselves fighting against God. All right, that was very good advice. And it would have been better if Gamaliel just said, they're not from men. All right, they're from God. We are fighting against God. Well, men fail every time. Next, God rules in the kingdom of men. That is a lesson that is in the book of Daniel, and it is a lesson that Psalm chapter 2 once again. Christ rules the nations with a rod of iron. He can smash any nation that He wants to. He can smash them all if that's what He wants to do. And this would seem to be the first example given of where God is going against a specific kingdom as opposed to destroying the whole earth by water. Here He is going up against a kingdom, and that kingdom, He kills nobody. But they're going to scatter and do precisely what He wanted them to do in the first place. That's what happens in that. And there is a consequence from rebellion. There's a reason why there is a Portuguese language, or an English language for that matter. There is a reason why there is the Bantu languages. There is a reason why you have the Chinese language and the Korean language, and you have Farsi. You have all these different languages. And it all goes back to a consequence going to Babel. It goes from there. And that truly consequences from rebellion can last for centuries. Well, in this case, it's lasting all the way to the end of the world. I doubt we'll ever speak just one language. Now, we're spread all over the world, and so that's done. And there is no promise that we would never have one language again. I just doubt we will. I just seriously doubt that we ever will. But here is the consequences to this day. And this is not a just so story of seeing something in the world and now I'm going to make a story up to fit it in, of why does the giraffe have a long neck? I make a just so story about that. Why are there all these languages in the world? Well, I'm going to make up this little bit of fiction to kind of explain it. That's not what this is. This is complete history. You can trust in it. There is no greater source than God. None whatsoever. And here is just an understanding of a few things concerning Babel. It's inside world history. It's just this side of the flood, this side of a completely changed world where Noah exited one world when he went into the ark, and he entered a different world when he stepped off. The forces and the wickedness and all that he had seen on the other side, completely gone. The population, completely gone. The wickedness, now gone forever. Wiped off the face of the earth. And there the earth has to rebound. The earth has to recover. So do we. And here we are. Here we are, spread all over the world. Truly we are. And multiple languages. I don't know how many languages there are. But God has communicated to all of us through His Bible that is absolutely unstoppable. And has been translated into, once again, I don't know how many languages. It does have the world record in that, by the way. It is the only book that has been translated into more languages than any other book, just as a side note. This evening we need to look. God's will is always done. It's always done. And it doesn't matter what we do, His will is going to be done. And we can go against His will and we find ourselves an enemy of God. The might of man, the wisdom of man is nothing compared to Him. Nothing. Just as this day has come and is leaving, so too will the day of judgment. It will be here. Judgment will be done on all mankind individually. Everyone as individuals judged by Christ. And He is going to judge us according to His words. Here's the standard. He's going to judge us in a universal law that applies to everyone. He's going to judge us consistently. He is no respecter of persons. He cannot be bribed. He cannot be influenced. He is going to judge righteously. Today He offers grace. Then it will be just judgment. If you have not taken Him and His words and been obedient to Him, you do not have His grace. It, as we talked about this morning, it requires obedience for that, full obedience, and He accepts anyone. This evening, if you need to respond to the invitation, if we can help you in any way, we ask that you come as we stand and sing.